Are there reasons to be concerned about the direction of Oklahoma football?
You are Locked On Sooners, your daily podcast on the Oklahoma Sooners. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, Sooner Nation? Welcome to Locked On Sooners, and thank you for making Locked On Sooners your first listen every single day. Shout out to all the everydayers out there. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Place your first $5 bet, and you'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. I'm John Williams. Jay Smith will be back with us on our Friday show to get you ready for Oklahoma versus South Carolina. And we're going to start off with what Paul Finebaum had to say about the direction of Oklahoma football. We'll also discuss who is South Carolina. What kind of team can we expect to see on Saturday versus the Oklahoma Sooners? We'll go through the initial injury report as well. Project, hey, which of those guys might be available for Oklahoma in a pivotal SEC matchup. But first, Paul Finebaum always has something to say about everything that's happening in the SEC, and given the stakes and the nature of OU Texas, you know that he was going to have some comments after Oklahoma's performance against the Longhorns. So here's what he had to say. Here's the problem with Oklahoma. They chose an unusual route when they hired Brent Venables. Was it that unusual? I don't know. We'll discuss that in a second. Some of it had to do with him being a beloved figure out there for having coached under Bob Stoops. So he came in terrible first year. He bounced back, and this year is trending toward a mess. Finebaum later went on to say that if he's not careful, things could turn south. People could turn on Brent Venables, even those who are fans of his and believe that he's the right coach for the job. So let's just start with the idea that it's an unusual route. Brent Venables was a highly sought after coaching candidate for quite some time. Think back to when he took the job. There was discussion about Auburn trying to hire him at one point. And you know that other programs over his 30-year career, at least the last 25 plus or 20 plus as a decorated defensive coordinator, had been trying to probably get him to come be a head coach somewhere. He bided his time. He was patient. He waited it out. And here we are. Is it an unusual route because he came back to a place in which he was a defensive coordinator under Bob Stoops? Maybe, but you see that kind of stuff happen all the time, right? A former coach, an alumni of a program goes back to a place where they were well regarded either as a player or as an assistant, and they go and they find success, or sometimes they don't find success. A lot of times, actually, it doesn't necessarily pan out all that great, but you get Brent Venables here. I think everybody was excited about the hire when it happened. I don't think anybody was down in the hire. You know, you wanted to have maybe somebody with a little bit more experience to take over, but listen, the move from, Bob Stoops to Lincoln Riley, offensively, it worked great. Defensively, it was terrible, but the lack of experience wasn't necessarily the issue. It was more of a lack of, or a difference in philosophy, a lack of commitment to improving the trenches, strength and conditioning, all that stuff, which, Oklahoma somewhat rectified when they went and got Brent Venables, right? Brought back Jerry Schmidt, made a concerted effort to recruit defensive line in particular. They've worked on trying to get offensive line. It just hadn't panned out until the 2025 class. Right now, you've got two guys in Foje and Michael Fasusi that are committed. But I mean, in that 2024 class, you added guys like Eugene Brooks, Eddie Pierre-Louis that people are really, really excited about. So Brent Venables has made a concerted effort to reestablish Oklahoma's presence in the trenches. It's only that things are not going well this year. And really, where things are not going well this year is because of the offensive side of the football. Brent Venables so far, mission accomplished on defense, right? Like everything is trending in a really, really positive direction. That game against Texas, notwithstanding, where your stars, didn't really play like stars. Danny Stutzman played well. Billy Bowman didn't play well. Your starting cornerbacks didn't necessarily play well, but your defensive line played well. For the most part, your linebacker crew played pretty good. Your safety crew, it didn't really live up to the expectations that you'd have for them at this point in the season. And so, it's still a work in progress, but for the most part, the defense is playing good ball. And year 3 under Brent Venables, it's still trending in a really positive direction, especially considering you have like a guy like Jaden Jackson, who has been really, really good. He's stout up front, and he's going to only continue to get better. as his Oklahoma career progresses. And you haven't even scratched the surface yet with a guy like David Stone or Nigel Smith or Danny Okoye, Wyatt Gilmore, that really, really highly regarded, impressive defensive line class from the 2024 cycle. That's only going to get better. It's only going to continue to improve and progress. You still have guys, in your linebacker core like Kobe McKenzie and Kip Lewis, Samuel Omasigo, Lewis Carter, that are going to continue to get better as well. So like the front seven, I'm ecstatic. I think it's great. I think it's heading in the right direction. Offensively, you got a lot of things to figure out. We've discussed it a ton this week, so I don't want to belabor the point. But if the offense was respectable at all, if it was an average offense, say it ranked somewhere in the 60s, 70s, 65. There's 134 SBF team or FBS teams, so that'd be 67th. If the offense ranks 67th in yardage or points per game, then you might feel a whole lot different about where Oklahoma's at. But they don't. They're one of the worst in college football in points per game right now. I mean, this is a team that has just backslid considerably after the 2023 season, which they were one of the best offenses in the country. Right now, they're 94th in points per game, but that's trending in the wrong direction, right? You started with 51 against Temple. You had 16 against Houston, 34 against Tulane, and then it was 15. You only had 20 offensive points against Auburn. And then this past week against Texas, you just had 3. And that came off of a turnover. Not off of a turnover, but was that off the turnover? No, that wasn't off the turnover. But you're trending in the wrong direction offensively. And that's going to be the thing that stands out the most, is if they cannot correct and get the offense moving in the right direction over the final 6 games of the season. Paul Finebaum is somewhat right. And you can kind of already see it, that people are turning on Brent Venables a little bit, in large part because of the offensive coordinator hires, which he is responsible for. Remember, we held Lincoln Riley to the same standard on the defensive coordinators, right? When he wasn't getting the defensive coordinator hires right, it didn't look good. And again, some of that comes back to, who are you looking at for your offensive coordinator hires? I think a lot of people are not sold on Seth Luttrell and Joe John Finley long term. And so far through 6 games, it's hard to not agree. I mean, what we've seen isn't just a personnel issue. It's there's a schematic issue that's going on. Yes, there's an execution problem that's happening when the game is on the field and things are coming open. And I mean, Brent Venables talked about it. The quarterback's just not throwing the ball, or we're not making the right read, or guys aren't running crisp enough routes. At the same time, who's responsible for all that? Well, that's the offensive staff. And unless Brent Venables is able to get the offensive staff and the offensive side of the ball playing more sound football, similar to the defense. I mean, the defense looked really, really good when they were playing sound football in the first quarter. When they weren't executing well in the second quarter, it all fell apart. Got back to playing a little bit more sound, disciplined football in the second half. Things looked a little bit better, but still, you ended up, you were so far behind that it didn't matter because your offense wasn't going to score. And so the offense has to play more disciplined. They have to play sound football, but they also have to be a little bit more aggressive too. The offense is not reflecting the defense. The defense is an aggressive defense. They're going to attack. They're going to come at you. The offense, it's just not right. It's not there right now. And some of that is due to a lack of experience. And we're going through the growing pains of some of that. At the same time, you've got to find a way to push through that. You got to push through that inexperience, and you've got to find a way to get your offense to match your defense, or at least meet your defense in the middle. Your defense, it's one of the best in the country. It ranks right now 28th in points per game, allowing just 19 points per game. And that's even after allowing 34 to Texas. It's heading in the right direction, but you've got to find a way to meet that defense in the middle, and you've got to provide some help to that defense. It can't do everything by itself. You got to be able to score points at every level of football. You've got to be able to score points. Expecting a team to hold the opponent to 3 every week or 0 every week is not reasonable, and it's not going to happen, especially in the SEC and against the South Carolina team that's pretty good. And we're going to find out a little bit more about this South Carolina team coming up next here on Locked On Sooners. FanDuel is America's #1 sports book, and over there at FanDuel right now, Oklahoma has moved to just a -1.5 point favorite. They started as a 2.5 point favorite over at FanDuel. The over/under is still sitting at 40.5. Man, it's hard to know exactly how to lean into that Oklahoma South Carolina line over at FanDuel because you just don't know what you're going to get out of the Oklahoma offense just yet. But some other interesting matchups this weekend in college football. Not really many top 25ers, but Alabama, Tennessee. Alabama's a 2.5 point favorite on the road, Neyland Stadium. The over under there, 56.5. If you want to get in on the action, go to fanduel.com. When you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. You'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. That's fanduel.com, America's #1 sports book. Again, thanks for making Locked On Sooners your first listen every single day. Shout out to all the everydayers out there. Thank you for subscribing to the show wherever you get your podcasts. We're free and available on all podcast platforms, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. South Carolina Gamecocks are a very interesting team. They've had some really nice games. They've had some high highs. That beat down of Kentucky in Lexington ranks as one of their top moments of the season. They also played Alabama and LSU to 5 points combined losses. They lost to Alabama by 2 just this past weekend and lost to LSU by 3 a few weeks back. This is a South Carolina team that scored as many as they scored 33 against LSU, scored 25 on Alabama. They lost to Old Dominion to open the season. They, again, scored 31 against a really good Kentucky defense, scored 50 on Akron, but then only scored 3 against Ole Miss at home. So this is it's been an up and down season for Shane Beamer and the Gamecocks. It's hard to know exactly what you're going to get out of them, but one thing that you do know you're going to get out of them is pass rush productivity. Between Kyle Kennard and Dylan Stewart, those two are game wreckers. Kennard in particular, he's got 7.5 sacks. He has like 30 something total pressures, or 23 total pressures, I think it was actually. Just a really, really, really good pass rusher. Dylan Stewart, the true freshman, he had a really, really nice first game of the season. Hasn't been able to have as much sack productivity as the season's gone along, but he is a good player that will create fits for Oklahoma's offensive line. Both of those guys are going to be problems for Oklahoma's offensive line. Defensively, Nick Harbor is a really good player. He's got big speed, good size outside. This is a team that they move the ball around. They get it to a lot of different people, a lot of different players. Lenora Sellers, he's a good dual threat quarterback. He's ran for 219 yards this season. Again, that takes sack yardage out of the equation. But he's looking right now as a passer somewhat similar to Michael Hawkins, just averaging 6.8 yards per attempt. He's thrown 4 interceptions, 4 touchdowns. He's ran for 3. He's only completing 62.1% of his passes. You look at a guy like Michael Hawkins, and he's right there too. He's completing just 62% of his passes. His average yards per attempt, 6.8, but he's only thrown the 1 touchdown. They're both just kind of playing solid, not great football, but okay football. Lenora Sellers has more experience at this point, but did battle a bit of an injury earlier this season. So statistically, what do they look like? All right. So OU point per game differential, it's just -5.3. Okay. South Carolina -7.2. So the offense is scoring on average 7 more points than the defense. Oklahoma's offense on average is only scoring 5 more points than the defense is allowing. Turnover differential, Oklahoma is sitting at 1.1 plus. On the plus side of that, meaning the defense is getting more turnovers than the offense is giving up. South Carolina is even. So their turnover differential is 0. So that means they're turning the ball over as much as they're creating turnovers. So that actually could potentially benefit Oklahoma. If they can protect the ball, potentially win the turnover battle, that could help them potentially get a win in this game. South Carolina is doing a little bit better in the yardage standpoint. Their offense is creating on average 62.8 yards more than the defense is allowing. Oklahoma's offense on average is not creating as much offense as the defense is allowing. So Oklahoma's yardage total, they're averaging just, where was it? 287 total yards per game, which is not good. The defense is allowing 337 total yards per game, which is solid. Like that is actually fairly okay. But the offense only creating 287 total yards of offense. That's terrible. That's just absolutely terrible. In SP plus rating, this is just kind of they use projections and also what we've seen statistically and analytics and all that to break it down. Oklahoma overall is number 26 in the SP plus rating. South Carolina 34. The offense for Oklahoma is sitting at 59th. The defense number 12, and the special teams, actually pretty encouraging special teams unit, sitting at 31st. That's a big deal. Oklahoma coming into the season, right? They were one of the worst special teams units in the country last year. And we talked about how much they needed to improve on special teams. Credit to Doug Deacon. He's come in and he has significantly turned around this special teams unit, and they've needed him to, because especially as the offense has faltered, you need to be able to win on special teams to have a chance. South Carolina, the 34 overall in SP plus, 57th offensively. So just a touch better than Oklahoma, 24th defensively. Again, just a little bit behind Oklahoma, and then 74th on special teams. That's an area where Oklahoma has a chance to win. Shane Beamer has been really, really aggressive on special teams, playing some Beamer ball. It hasn't necessarily worked out in his favor most weeks. So that's going to be something to monitor and watch this week, is how aggressive does he get on the road on special teams against a good, Oklahoma defense. You know that Brent Venables is going to have, and Doug Deacon will have that team prepared for some fakes, for some different calls that they try to pull out to see if they can steal an extra possession. But that's going to be an interesting battle to watch on the special team side. Pro Football Focus, Oklahoma offensively just 128th out of 134, defensively number 12, special teams number 28. South Carolina ranks better in everything but special teams. Number 105 offensively, number 9 defensively, number 31 on special teams. On paper, look, it looks like South Carolina offensively is a better team. Defensively, they're about even. And on special teams, Oklahoma is likely the better team, but you never know how a game could go. A missed field goal here, a fumble on a kick return or a punt return in there, and it can turn the tide of the special teams battle. If South Carolina does go for a fake and they're able to convert, that could really shift the momentum of a game. So much of this is going to, again, come back to execution, how much Oklahoma improves offensively, because, again, a tough matchup for Oklahoma's offensive line against South Carolina's defensive line, and their secondary. South Carolina's secondary is pretty good. They're physical. They play tough. They held Ryan Williams to just 2 catches, held Jalen Milroe to just over 200 yards passing this past week against Alabama. So, for Oklahoma's young, inexperienced wide receiver group, it's a tough matchup, man. Somebody's going to have to rise to the occasion. Like this, we talked about it last week. Somebody needed to have an I'm him game, and nobody really did. Zion Kearney was arguably your best wide receiver with 4 catches for 45 yards. He needs to build on that. And the offense needs to get aggressive, and Michael Hawkins needs to throw the ball. He has to. So much of it we've discussed this week that, yes, the offensive play calling can help him get into a rhythm a little bit better, get him more comfortable in the passing game. But when things are there, he's got to throw the ball. You can't second guess it. You can't, pump fake it. You can't double pump it. You can't, hitch it. You got to throw. You got to throw with anticipation. You got to throw on time, and you got to take advantage of it when the play call is there and the wide receiver is open and ready to receive a pass. You got to throw it, because if you don't, you're not going to have 4 or 5 seconds with the South Carolina pass rush to get rid of the ball. And I imagine they're going to come into this game with a similar plan to spy Michael Hawkins, just like Texas did, not let him have any scramble lanes. They'll rush with discipline, try to keep him inside the pocket, and make him uncomfortable from there. So Hawkins is going to have to get comfortable, man. You're going to have to get comfortable in the pocket. You have to throw with anticipation and throw on time. Can he? We'll see. We'll give you our keys to the game. We'll give you our expectations and predictions for this big time game. I mean, Oklahoma's got to win this one. You don't have many games on the schedule where you're looking at it like Oklahoma's got this. They can win this. So you gotta find a way, man. You gotta find a way. So we'll discuss more of that for our Friday show. The Oklahoma SEC really released their injury report. What does it mean for the Oklahoma Sooners coming up next? We'll discuss any further news and notes around Oklahoma football as well coming up here after the break. Hey guys, your sex life is important, but your schedule is busy. You don't have the time to go to a doctor's office to get treated for ED. Through HIMS, you can get a personalized ED treatment without stepping foot outside your door. HIMS is changing men's healthcare by providing you with access to affordable sexual health treatments from the comfort of your couch. HIMS provides access to a range of doctor-trusted ED treatments like chewable, hard mints, and Viagra and Cialis, and their generics for up to 95% cheaper. The process is 100% online, so there's no need for uncomfortable doctor visits. Just answer a series of questions on their site, and a medical provider will determine the right treatment option. If prescribed, your medication ships directly to you in discreet packaging for free. No insurance is needed, and one low price covers everything from treatments to ongoing care. With hundreds of thousands of trusted subscribers, HIMS can help you find the ED option that works for you. Start your free online visit today at hims.com/lockedon. That's HIMS.com/lockedon for your personalized ED treatment options. HIMS.com/lockedon. The product mentioned are chewable compounded products which are not approved by or verified for safety or effectiveness by the FDA. Prescriptions require an online consultation with a healthcare provider who will determine if appropriate restrictions apply. See website for details and important safety information. Subscription required. Price varies based on product and subscription plan. Again, thanks for making Locked On Sooners your first listen every single day. Shout out to all the everydayers out there. Locked On Sooners is part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Go check out another great Locked On show with the NBA season getting going. Go check out Locked On Thunder with my man Rylan Stiles, the phenomenal Rylan Stiles. Also, go check out Locked On SEC with Chris Gordy to get you ready for all of the SEC action coming up this weekend. Again, big game between Alabama and Tennessee. That's going to be one that's on my to-do list as far as games to watch while I'm doing post-game stuff for Sooners Wire or for here as well. It'll be definitely on in the background, keeping an eye on Kalen DeBoer versus Josh Heupel and Jalen Milroe versus Nico Iamaleava. So the SEC injury report came out, and listen, a lot of the usual suspects for the Oklahoma Sooners. The most important one that we're monitoring here is Deion Burks. Deion Burks was listed as questionable on the initial injury report released by the SEC. So was Cade McIntyre. Surprising additions. Sam Franklin, running back, also kick returner, was listed as questionable. And David Stone, defensive lineman, was listed as probable. So, let's talk Deion Burks, man. At this point, it's hard to know when any of these wide receivers are going to come back. I don't know. I don't think they ever really said exactly what the issue was with Deion Burks. They said it was a soft tissue injury. That's so nondescript. It could be any number of things. It could be a hamstring pull. It could be a calf. It could be, who knows exactly. It could be like Quinn Ewers was dealing with an abdominal injury that was like a strain that it's just uncomfortable to try to play with. So that's going to be one of those that's going to be tough, man. If you can't get Deion Burks back, it again puts so much pressure on your young, inexperienced offense to go make plays. Hopefully we can get him back, man, because I think it really would help Michael Hawkins a lot if you can get Deion Burks back. I'm not holding my breath at this point. When a wide receiver suits up of significance for I say of significance, when a veteran wide receiver suits up for Oklahoma, I'll be as surprised as anybody. I don't like Jalil Farouk. I don't expect to be back until maybe the second bye, just before you play Alabama and LSU, if he comes back at all this season, just because you don't know where you're going to be at with this season. I mean, you're very much staring 6-6 and 5-7 right down the barrel right now. And that's crazy to think. That's crazy to think that Oklahoma is fighting for bowl eligibility coming into the season. We had such higher expectations for this team, for this offense. The defense meeting expectations, maybe a little bit below expectation, but for the most part, meeting expectations. They're a top 30 defense nationally. That's an improvement from where they were a year ago, right? They've improved. So it's just a matter of continuing to improve and then also finding your offense. The offense can't be this bad all year long. Otherwise, you're going to be 5-17. Your only win left is going to be Maine. And that's not going to be acceptable by any stretch of the imagination. I don't care what injuries you dealt with, what inexperience you dealt with, the quarterback change, any of that. For Brent Venables and his staff, 5-7 is not going to be an acceptable outcome from anybody. Like nobody, whether it's Sooner fans, Sooner media, national media, nobody's going to look at Oklahoma going 5-7 and feeling like, yeah, that's cool. We're content with that. Given the rash of injuries that Oklahoma dealt with, that's not going to be at all okay. So they've got to find a way to improve this offense. And again, a guy like Deion Burks could really help. Will he suit up? Brent Venables says he's doing everything he can to try to get out there. He's doing 80% of his volume right now. I know that there's like people out there trying to talk about how he's quitting on the team. He's not out there doing anything. I think that's nonsense. I don't think Brent Venables would talking the press conference about how he's doing 80% of his volume and trying to get back out there for the game if he wasn't trying to get out there for the game, if he wasn't doing everything he possibly could to be out there for the team. This idea that every player that's injured is just sitting out and quitting on the team, man, that's such nonsense. People deal with injuries. And I don't know what his recovery time is. You don't know what his recovery time is. And I'm not saying that's all Sooner fans, but I see it. I see it in our YouTube comments. I see it on social media. I've heard people say it just out in public, that the new era of the transfer portal is creating this dynamic that nobody wants to play through adversity. I think that's, listen, are there some? Absolutely. Is it a small minority of players, a very, very small fraction of players that are doing that? 100%. For every Bear Alexander that you see out there, there are 100 more guys that aren't getting the playing time that they want and are they're biding their time and they're waiting it out. They're seeing if there's going to be an opportunity. It's like Brent Venables talked about with Jackson Arnold that we covered yesterday in our show that, hey, if Jackson Arnold wants to redshirt, okay, that might be a thing that could happen. But if we need you to play, we need you to play. And given the state of the offense, a guy like Gerald McCoy saying on social media that he'd like to see Jackson Arnold get another start. Who's to say that Jackson Arnold couldn't get back into the lineup at some point? I mean, nothing is is off the table. You've got to find a way to improve your offense. And listen, Michael Hawkins has got all the talent in the world. He's got the skills. It's just a matter of now taking what he's got skill wise, translating that to the football field and getting more aggressive and starting to execute the offense at a high level. There's no time like the present. And so listen, yes, there are guys out there. We've seen the reports, whether it's, the Matt Sluka situation at UNLV because he wanted more NIL dollars and UNLV was content with the NIL contract that their collective signed with them and they weren't going to do anything different, whether it's the Bear Alexander situation at USC or the kid from Alabama, the defensive lineman who just isn't getting enough playing time, also been a little bit dinged up. For every one of those situations, there are countless situations where guys maybe aren't happy with their playing time, but they're being good teammates about it. They're doing their work. They're keeping their head up. They're not sulking on the sideline. They're doing everything the right way. And I expect nothing different from a Brent Venables coach team, the guys on the team doing things the right way. And that's Deion Burks included. Deion Burks is that dude, when he plays the game of football, he plays with such a joyful spirit. You see it on his face. Like he's smiling, he's laughing, he's having a good time out there. Early in the season, when things offensively were going well, you could see how good of a time he was. Now, yeah, with wide receivers that can turn on an instant, but he just doesn't seem like one of those guys that gets too high, gets too low. He just seems to have a joyful spirit about him. And so I don't think this is a guy that is purposefully trying to sit out and trying to redshirt. I don't think whether he comes back in 2024 or not, I don't think he's coming back for another year of college football. I think he's going off to the NFL next year, no matter what. He's going to test so well at the NFL Combine. He's going to test well on the speed stuff and the quickness stuff, the agility. He's going to jump out the gym. I mean, for a guy his size, he's going to post some really, 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 really impressive numbers. They're going to have scouts and general managers and head coaches just salivating over his potential in their offense. And so I don't think he's sitting out so that he can have another year of college football eligibility. I think he's dealing with an injury that's keeping him from doing the things that he needs to be able to do on a football field. And so my guess is it has something to do with his legs, because you got to be able to have your legs as a wide receiver. You got to be able to run routes. You got to be able to cut and move quickly. So I think that Deion Burks has a chance. If I'm putting it, I would say right now it's 50-50. If we get to the next injury report and he's now probable, I'll bump that up to 75%. If we stay questionable through the week and he's a game time decision, I'll probably keep it at 50-50. But if we can get to game time decision, hey, that's a better place than what we've been, because he was ruled out for the Texas game before we even got to Saturday. So that'll be what we'll continue to monitor. We'll see where it all stands, where it all lands, but you could definitely use a guy like Deion Burks back in the lineup for your offense. And that's going to do it for today's episode of Locked On Sooners. Thanks so much for tuning in, being a part of the show. Subscribe to the show wherever you get your podcast, free and available on all podcast platforms and on YouTube. So hit that notification bell and that subscribe button to let you know when new episodes drop. Follow myself on Twitter at John9Williams, my buddy Jay, who will be back for Friday's show at Unfair Sports. Also go check out his channel at Unfair Sports. You can also follow the show on all the social media platforms at Locked On Sooners, TikTok, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, X, whatever you want to call it. We are there and got you covered with more Sooners content. But until next time, I'm John Williams for my buddy Jay Smith, Boomer Sooner.